Here we are again, discussing yet another U-turn when the government concludes, after public outrage at an announcement that they've made, and after some tardy reflection, that perhaps they did not get matters right first time. What is offered is not merely tardy, but inadequate. It fails to grapple with the pressures now bearing down on small businesses across the country, especially pressure from business rates. My Lords, it is essential that we look beyond the Treasury's abstractions and confront the real-world consequences of the changes announced in the budget, and which remain even after this U-turn. Tina McKenzie of the Federation of Small Businesses has warned, following this latest announcement, that it simply proves that the government repeatedly fails to recognise the difficulty that small businesses are in. I couldn't echo that more strongly. Andrew Goodacre, the Chief Executive of the British Independent Retailers Association, went further, describing this change as a half-baked U-turn and warning that independent retail is being flushed around the U-bend. He added tellingly that he could not recall a worse policy decision, cautioning that this poor decision is based on poor reasoning that will inevitably lead to more shop closures, and so on. My Lords, the Minister has said that he wishes to work with businesses, and in the face of this negative and consistent feedback from these businesses themselves, especially from SMEs, it seems he has been unsuccessful in that aim. It's abundantly clear that the statement addresses only a small fraction of the economic damage inflicted on businesses since they took office. Nor is the inadequacy merely one of scale. The relief announced is by the government's own design temporary. So it's a sticking plaster applied to a deep and structural wound. My Lords, one of the most persistent economic misunderstandings this government has displayed since assuming office is a failure to grasp what businesses actually need. Its clarity, its consistency, and its certainty. Businesses do not want U-turns. They do not want short-lived reliefs. They do not want promises trailed in briefings only to be withdrawn or re-announced days later, as we all saw before the budget. And this announcement exemplifies that failure in its entirety. And worse still, everyone in the sector is saying it's inadequate. And if the noble Lord the Minister will not listen to His Majesty's opposition, he might perhaps listen to the Labour backbenchers, Jing McMahon and Stella Creasy, made the point I am making in the other place just this week. When Parliament, publicans, business leaders and his own backbenchers are urging a reconsideration, what more is the Minister waiting for? This is ultimately a question of credibility. Businesses do not measure this by press releases or promises of future strategies. They measure it by whether they can plan, invest and survive. And what has been announced does not provide that certainty. It's limited in scope, temporary by design, and arrived only after external pressure became unsustainable. That's not how stable tax policy is made, and it's not how confidence is restored. And the truth is that confidence in hospitality and retail is fragile. We heard only this morning from Charlie Nunn, CEO of Lloyds Bank, that the sectors in question were having a challenging time. So what assessment has the Treasury made of the number of such businesses that have already cancelled investment, reduced staffing, or decided to close since the budget, because the government has failed to provide clarity as to their intentions? And if the government truly wished to work with businesses, they must move beyond reactive concessions and bring forward a coherent, durable approach that treats the whole high street fairly and gives enterprises the certainty they need to grow. Until that happens, I fear this week's announcement will not be seen as a solution, but as an admission of failure. The modest action on pubs is, of course, welcome, and a promise has been made to look at hotels. But will the noble Lord the Minister agree to look at rates for the wider retail, hospitality and leisure sectors before the next budget? Thousands and thousands of shops, cafes, hotels, nightclubs, cinemas and theatres are still facing huge increases. The combination of higher taxes and rates, extra regulation, and energy prices for business 4 times those in the United States is crippling these very sectors. And I do hope the Minister will be able to promise some relief.
My Lords, let me start with perhaps a modicum of welcome. Because the combined impact of the budget and business rates revaluation prior to this announcement frankly left the pub industry on the verge of a crisis, with up to 50% of pubs under threat of closure. So some relief has now been offered for many pubs, and I'm very glad that this lifeline has been extended to live music venues, which are the birthing ground of our very critical music industry. But, my Lords, does the government still recognise that the relief that it's just announced only amounts to roughly £1,650 per pub, which for many is still going to leave them in a critical financial hole, that pubs with a rateable value over £100,000 are not eligible in effect, that restaurants, cafes, soft play areas, so many of those hospitality and leisure operations which lie at the heart of both our high streets and of our communities, they get no relief from these changes whatsoever. My Lords, I think the chaos that has surrounded the announcement, the review, the change, the uncertainty that's gone with it, and the impact on the sector surely points to the fact that we need to stop trying to fix the business rate system at the fringes and to really take a proper step back and review the whole way in which business rates are structured. I would say heading in the direction of land value, but there's so much to be done around this area, and it's time that the government absolutely sees this rather than get into continuous messes that as attempting to ameliorate a system which frankly is broken. And does the government also accept that the chaotic process that we've seen deeply underscores the need to include hospitality in the industrial strategy? Because at the very least, one would have some hope that the effect of that would be to force Treasury to align tax policy with presumably the economic goal of strengthening our high streets, strengthening our hospitality and leisure sectors, and determining that they are a source of growth and not of constant crisis and constraint. And until, frankly, Treasury gets aligned with that agenda, does he accept that we are going to have constant issues like this? And frankly, it really isn't the best way to go.